Can you hear us, Christopher?
Oops.
No?
He can hear us, but we cannot.
Can you hear us? Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. Skype at 6 p.m.
Well, we were given money to write a script by a company that went out of business before we actually bought pens. And they said, go and write the script. They gave us money, and we realized that was going to be hard to do because we wanted it to look like a documentary. And to script a faux documentary is a very bad mistake because it won't have any spontaneity. It will look uncomfortable. You see them occasionally.
Yeah.
So we just took the money they gave us and started shooting the movie. They didn't even know it. And then the company folded, and we had 20 minutes of film, and we took it around in Hollywood and showed people, and they basically said, what the fuck is this? Is actually what they said.
And what the fuck was it? I mean, what did you say? What is?
Well, it's hard to explain. If you don't think it's funny, then that's okay. You don't think it's funny. It was what it was.
Is someone driving through the living room? That would seem the.
Well, my wife was just. My lovely wife just left, so.
She left you? I'm sorry.
No, she just drove away just to do something, I imagine. But,
okay, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
I think she's picking my son up from school.
Okay.
Have I mentioned this? I think I did that already.
Yes, let's get back to that. No, so what the fuck was this? And you guys pressed on though, and you had a.
Well, we thought it was amusing. Look, you make a movie, and the thing about show business is that it's not like baseball. You know, if you hit a home run, it's actually a home run. The guy can't say it's actually a double.
Right.
You can make a movie, and you think it's funny, and you do the best you can. And eventually, Norman Lear said, "Just go and make the movie." He said to Rob, "I trust you. Go and make the film." So we were left alone, and we made a very inexpensive movie, and. Still, people said, "What the fuck is this?" Which is okay, and people thought it was a real documentary.
Yeah, yeah. I've shown it to students.
Because that style hadn't been done, so it was very confusing to people. They didn't know who we were because no one knew who we were, and so they just thought, "Why would you make a movie about these idiots?" You know.
Those early shows you were doing in New York, some really interesting credits. What was it like working, the easy question here, what was it like working with a script? What was it like working with an author? What was it like working pre your technique now and pre...
Well, that's what actors do. Obviously, you're trained to in that case, I did plays for a long time in New York, and that's what you do. That's what you're taught how to do, and that's what you end up doing. My interest in improvisation really didn't come from any improvisational training. It was just something I started doing. I never took any, I never was in an improv group. I never did anything like that until we did Spinal Tap, and we kind of just did it.
Do you get that question a lot? Do people assume you went to Second City or the Groundlings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find that that kind of training is not always so helpful if you're doing it in the style that I'm doing it on film. It's a different kind of style. It's for a live audience. It's not based in so much reality. So it's a different thing.
Do you think it can be taught? Do you think improv skill can be taught, or do you think it's
No, sad answer, I guess. I think you have to have some ability to do that just from scratch, in the same way that you can be inherently musical and jump into music. Obviously, you have to practice an instrument. In this case, I found, having done this now for a very long time, that you can do it or you can't do it. I don't know anyone who couldn't do it and then went to improv classes and then were able to do it.
What was pushing you away from scripted material? Was there ever a kind of boredom, or was it simply you got more interested in other forms of expression?
No, I just found this is something I had been doing, not in a class or for money, but just with friends ever since I was very small.
Right.
And I thought, wait a minute, This seems to be interesting because it's so free, and yet at the same time, when you're directing one of these films and putting it together, we shoot for 27 days or so, and we edit for a year and a half.
Wow. Wow.
It's the complete opposite of a conventional film where you may shoot for 4 or 5 months, and by the time you finish shooting, there's a semblance of the movie already because they've been cutting as you go along, and then there's a period of post-production. So this is almost the opposite. So I look at the material with the editor, nothing has been cut until I finish, and I look at it, and then we discuss it. There is a story, it can't veer from the story we've laid out, but there are nuances that are worked on.
When you say story, you mean narrative, like a plot?
There's a narrative, there's a story. Yeah. It's not suddenly as if in Waiting for Guffman, as if my character joins the army and we have to choose, that scene. That doesn't exist. So we know what the premise is. We know the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's how to carve out this story the best way.
When you think of the practical elements of your film, let's say Guffman for a second, the number of actors, how much of that goes into the creative process of the story? How much of the
everything is laid out. You have the entire cast.
Right.
We've worked on how they know each other, what their past, their back histories are, how they would interact with each other, and then you write the story. You say, here's the story. This is what happens in it. Everything is there except the dialogue. Without being glib, we know they're going to provide the dialogue, and everyone in that company of actors knows how to do that.
And then character names as well. That's something.
Character names, everything. Yeah, they're making up the dialogue. They're not making up their characters, essentially. They are, in the same way that some actors used to in New York say, I created the role of,
right.
Instead of, the author created the role, that someone wrote in this case, we crafted the storyline, the names of the characters, where they grew up, stuff you never ultimately even heard in the film, just so they knew when they were improvising, they weren't just scrambling. It's all based on something. It's not just messing around. It's its own craft.
We to study improv on in other contexts, let's say John Cassavetes or Mike Leigh, not to overthink this stuff, but someone like Mike Leigh, who will create characters based on models. Let's say he'll take 5 people he knows in real life. What about the work?
Well, that's a very different thing. Ultimately, he ends up with a script because he's kind of workshopped this with actors. In Cassavetes' films, there's a huge difference, which is those people don't know how to improvise. They are improvising, and it's not meant to be funny, and it isn't funny, but it's not necessarily effective. It's almost like an exercise you do in an acting class where you say, just go, and now you're angry and you're yelling, but boy, it's not funny. So from my standpoint, I'm not a fan of that because what I do is a different thing, but Mike Leigh makes interesting movies, but again, it's a very different thing.
Did you have any thought that your sense of humor could touch other people than American?
It only touches English-speaking countries because in other countries, in my experience, it's too hard to translate what's going on in the dialogue. Yeah. So it just doesn't work at all. So basically, I make movies for America, England, Australia, New Zealand. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Canada.
For me, it's been like 1.5 years I'm here, but I only get to know the real American culture. That's why I can understand your jokes.
Yes.
I think it's not just a matter of talking English. It's also like living in the country and
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So
it is.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
When did Guffman come about as an idea?
I can tell you that. I actually know the answer to that.
Excellent.
Fortunately. I went to see a musical that a friend's daughter was in junior high school. And it was Annie, Get Your Gun.
Right.
Which 12-year-olds shouldn't be doing.
I agree, yes.
But they do, they do, 12-year-olds do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. They do things and you think, wow, okay. great. You know, that white powder in their hair.
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
Smoking a pipe.
And, yeah, they smoke a pipe. Except they have a really high voice and legs. So this was this musical, and the director came out at the end. And the whole notion of this was original. And then I thought, this is what I want to do. But then I realized that I couldn't get that age actors to improvise this movie. It just was not going to work.
Oh, interesting.
So I transposed that to a theater company, an amateur theater company. I had been an apprentice at Summer Stock, where I was getting $9 a week to paint scenery, and you know, I kept saying, when am I going to be in the show? I was 16. They said, never. I said, I guess I had the wrong impression about what this was, and you'd wash the scenery, then you had to paint over it, and that was my job. And then, you know, I studied acting, and then I did some plays, and, you know, eventually you learn how to do this. And from some Summer Stock experiences, I saw some things that helped me later in Waiting for Guffey.
We were talking about Robert De Niro a couple weeks ago, and that he likes, at some point in his career before he became a celebrity, he liked to observe people on the street. And I was thinking about you in that way as well. Do you observe people?
I observed Robert De Niro.
Yeah. And Corky was the progeny?
I do. I'm anonymous enough occasionally where I can I like being in a regular place to see people's behavior. I think that's the whole thing that makes me want to do what I do, is watching how people behave. People that are talking to each other at the same time, people that don't say anything. When I work with my actors, I say, you don't have to say anything, because just being in these moments and scenes is what you're not allowed to do in films. Because of the cutting pattern, and the dialogue goes back and forth, you're not allowed to play them in real time.
Right.
When we do scenes, we roll out the entire role, because that's the real dynamic of whatever scene it is, as opposed to 1.5 pages, which is a long scene in today's films. And occasionally, there are people who write films for actors to do, but it's more rare.
What's so great about your company is they all seem very normal. I mean, you know, Fred Willard and you know, they all seem quite normal, and then the work begins, and it's amazing. So this disconnect, I think, is really fascinating.
I think it's the normal people. Guffman is this small town,
right?
And it's what's funny to me is the pretension that they have, even though they're the dentist trying to be an actor. People take themselves very seriously, and I think that's what's funny, and I think that's true. You could pick any of the other films I've done about people who do a dog show. It's just, you think, well, it's a dog show. There's nothing,
right.
Okay, you know. But in my experience, you know, you could find people who do what they do in a bank or whatever, and it's going to be funny because there's a strange sense that they take their job so seriously that it's a bit more than you would imagine, maybe.